couldn't hear you for your last, I don't know, 1 minute. Can I be heard?
Yes, you can.
Okay, so let's see on the call. I probably just know you, TJ and Tracy. That should speak to how old I have become. Sad, but yeah, I have really grown so old in this circuit. Yeah, I'm extremely happy because, specifically because of the initiative. Thank you, TJ, for carrying this institute forward and the effort that you actually put into mentor upcoming debaters, judges, chief adjudicators. Cheers to you for that. And also specifically because I've watched it for some time now. And I think I must say that this was Debate Institute Africa was one of the first opportunities that I got that probably exposed me out there with my chief adjudication. I remember that I think before House of Lords, I don't remember if I had been like CACA, maybe I'd been like on the panel, but like taking on the mantle and yeah, I have quite benefited from this very platform. So in principle, I'm also happy to come and share with you and give back where I got from. So I'm very, very delighted to be here. So for those who don't know me, my name is Nakiggudde Maria Speria. And yeah, like Tahinduka mentioned, it's not true. I was forced into retirement by various circumstances. But yes, I can confidently say that I have done a lot of debating, a lot of adjudication, a lot of CAP experience. And I thank God and the Ugandan debate circuit for that. So yeah, let's get into it. I think the conversation today is how to be chief adjudicator and yeah, the various roles that come under it. So in my discussion today, as is our policy, is to sort of brainstorm what we're going to be talking about. I'm going to give a brief background on what entails chief adjudication in of itself. What does it mean to be a chief adjudicator and the things that come with being chief adjudicator. I am going to highlight what I think are salient roles for chief adjudicators, both pre-tournament and during the tournament. And majorly, I'm also going to speak about the core principles that I think govern CAP or the core adjudication panel, because essentially then the CA is normally the head of the core adjudication panel. So I'm going to briefly tackle some of those principles that I think, in my experience, have probably normally facilitated a good tournament and led us to completion. And then I'm going to talk a bit, not a bit, I'm going to also talk about building adjudication panels, handling conflicts in tournaments. So generally, I'm going to talk about having a successful tournament as a chief adjudicator. Yeah. So first off, I think that it is important for us to understand that a chief adjudicator is like the conductor of like the tournament's rhythm. Yeah. They play a very pivotal role to the success and also the continuity of the tournament. By continuity, I mean, for example, if House of Lords hires you to become a chief adjudicator, you speak to whether the tournament continues having participants because of your participation and contribution as a CA, and you also speak to the success of that very tournament. And that's why it's very important. I think one day, if I were to begin a debate organization, choosing chief adjudicators, because a chief adjudicator becomes like the face of the tournament for that period, which in essence has an impact to the continuity of that tournament and the reputation of the tournament as a whole, which I think is very important for us to cover on why it's very important to maintain the integrity and give that position the power and the respect it deserves. So I think that, in my opinion, I think that chief adjudication begins before the tournament, before the actual days of the tournament. It looks like we're talking about organization. Now, this is very important. A chief adjudicator is both for the organizing committee and is both for the judges. I think as we go on, I'll share some of my experiences on how balancing that is essentially important for continuity of tournaments and also success of tournaments. So because of that, and that's like proof that this person is part of OGCOM, because as the chief adjudicator, you're going to, what makes a debate tournament is judges. For starters, I hope we know that good food, a good venue, all those are secondary. If the if the tournament does not have good adjudication, it is bad. It is going to give people a bad experience, and chances are that people are not going to want to come back to engage in that kind of tournament. So it becomes very crucial. I think that I have normally some of my experiences with big organizations of debate. Okay, maybe the biggest that I've worked with has been, I think, UNSA, and fronting arguments like facilitate judges better than you're going to facilitate probably the entertainers, because what makes the tournament a tournament is good adjudication. Good adjudication comes with motions, with impartiality, with learning, with competition, and all that. So your role as CA begins before even the tournament commences. In and of itself, it looks like you're going to have to participate in selection of days. For example, you will have to engage or command your position on how many motions can practically be debated in a day, how many motions should be before lunch. Oh, those things look like trivial things, but when we start the tournament, they culminate into serious factors. So I've sometimes seen patrons box judges and CAs here and there, which is very unfortunate. But I think that as CA, you start to participate before the tournament begins, to organize with the OCOM on what is going to be on what day. But the most important aspect pre-tournament is how you come up with the adjudication team that you're going to work with. I think that for the longest time in our circuit, we probably operated a narrative where people become judges in a tournament because they are friends to maybe CAs, because they are friends to tournament organizations. I mean, organizers, even when they don't really merit. For example, if I'm very good friends with TJ and I need a judging gig, which is unfortunate, and then TJ is like, oh, Speria, you can jump on this and come and judge. I will be the one who is selecting. So there you start digging your own grave, because you already have no integrity, you're already not impartial, you're putting your personal interests at the forefront of the success of this tournament. And I think that's the most selfish decision any chief adjudicator can take. I think it is important that even from the very beginning, you plan out everything. And like I said, if the judges are shitty, the tournament is going to turn out shitty. If the judges are good, the tournament is going to be amazing. You're going to enjoy it. People are going to learn. People are going to compete fairly. And there is continuity. And I think that's very important. And your contribution to the continuity of that competition itself is fundamentally important and strong. And notice how, at the point when you decide to become careless with that role, it then backslides, the tournament can get backlash. You find that the following year people don't want to come and compete in the tournament because you're such a bad leader. Yeah, so that's very important on selection of judges. So what normally I think should then happen, like how do we select judges to come for a tournament? Pre-tournament, I think that it's better for you to open and make a call for each and every individual that is actually willing to come and adjudicate. Normally, my system was, if I make a call, you come up, then I put a test to censor, if depending on the level of tournament that we're going to engage in. If you don't pass a certain pass mark, then you don't qualify for even the briefing and the training. Normally, that's what I did, especially for crucially competitive tournaments, because then adjudication standards are very important. Of course, except scenarios where you have worked with certain people and you know how good they are, and that's a fact. I'll put it out there. I'll probably say, I'll call on like people off my head because I've worked with them. I know that they are good judges. I may not necessarily need to subject them to these tests, but it's normally fairer and better, especially if you're a new CA on the block. Just make a call. People will apply. Have your test run. People will answer. Pick who passes your pass mark, and then subject them to trainings. So I did carry out a lot of judges trainings because personally I'm very passionate about adjudication, but most importantly I'm very passionate about feedback. And I think for some of the people that have probably judged before, or where I have been CA, the reason why I can rotate around the whole school and ensure that I visit each and every room to see specifically how judges are giving feedback, because that's one of the values that are very pertinent to adjudication, to help students learn how to debate, to help them become better people, but also to qualify the quality of adjudication. You can't claim to be a good judge if you can't give feedback. It's impossible. What have you judged that you can't justify? What have you judged that you can't teach on? So that was normally the essence of delving into some of those things and having close supervision, right? So before I like delve into the core things, let's now talk about the principles of core adjudication. First of all, I think that as an individual, you must set a certain level of standard in the way you speak to people, standard in the way you dress up. You can't be a CA, in my opinion, who is showing up in damages. And notice why this is important is that here you stand in a position where you are going to, like, you are an epitome of so many things to these students that are turning up. And I normally discourage judges from showing up any way they want, specifically because of, maybe I'm a conservative, but I mean, that's debatable. People just prefer to do things the freestyle way, but maybe me, I'm a conservative. But I think that when you're dealing with students who are below 18 years, even when they're 18 years, but they're still in high school, they have so much to learn, and they don't just learn from class. I think that when they come for things like debate tournaments, they have so much inspiration to draw, they have so much to learn. So I'm in a better place having an adjudicator who is well dressed, whose hair is well kempt, so that this kid can see that that's how decent human beings live. So that one day, if they decide to have unkempt hair, if they decide to do things elsewhere, one, they will have known what it ought to look like. But two, what are the chances? Because if you're an adjudicator and you stand in a position of power, I mean, over these students or over these children, and they see you as lousy as possible, what are the chances that they're going to pick the right traits? I think it then becomes justified. I don't know. Again, I apologize for being public conservative on that, but I still think it's like having a teacher who is indecent. Like when you're in a tournament, you're like a parent. People see you, people admire you, people look up to you. And because of that, in principle, you ought to pull off what is right just for the sake of these students actually taking the right picture home. If someone was straight and they come and they see you like that, they might admire the English you speak. So notice the power you actually have to influence their lives. And I think if you must, let it be the bare minimum. So I think as a chief adjudicator, you should maintain a certain level of even physical appearance, right? I think that you should be smart, well put out there, because that also speaks to the confidence. And some of these patrons, by the way, come from extremely intensely conservative backgrounds. Some of them are first-time participants. They come to a tournament, they see you in torn jeans. You're the one who has unkempt hair. You're the one wearing flat shoes and running about the main hall, and they are very unimpressed. Like I said, you're the brand for the tournament. So they're like, what? The chief adjudicator looks like this. One, it starts to lessen your credibility, regardless of the fact that you can actually have substantive information to put out there. People get these visions of you and they imagine that you're such a horrible person, even when you have. So they start to not trust you. And yet, as a CA, the most important thing at the end of the day is to be seen as I don't know, as gracious as possible, as someone who is all round, someone who is good, someone who will be fair, someone who is bright. Also, sometimes it's better to come off bright. So I think that how you dress up also matters, your physical outlay and how you speak to people. So I think those are some of the qualities as an adjudicator that you ought to set there. Secondly, I think that it's also important to have a command of your own. For example, some people will know Speria doesn't put up with this kind of thing. Speria would not allow this. Or you do that by practicing it. If I go in a tournament and I tell judges you're not showing up in torn jeans, I damaged jeans, sorry, I will not be in damages. I think for the longest time I have been remembered to have wore suits, heels, whichever way I can do it to give the bare minimum, respect the tournament in and of itself. So you give it the relevance by how you also act and how you behave in the tournament itself. But setting your own principles is important so that organizers, because some organizers can be very problematic, yeah. They can, for example, want to engage you to maybe negotiate with some schools to award certain wins. So you need to be known, not to be engaged. There's a time I remember vividly. There was a time in a certain tournament where I was going to be CA, and I was actually approached, genuinely approached by a head teacher who was offering me some money to release some of the impromptu motions and to ensure they have like a smooth ride with tab and all those things. And I remember that when we were on that call, the gentleman who was trying to mediate said, "Ha, Maria Speria, news of Turkeys, news of Tasowoka." So I think for me, that in itself gave me a bit of contentment and confidence that I'm glad that I am not being engaged in this in the first place, right? If someone knows that I'm not going to allow, or if someone knows that I would regard that as disrespect, for me, I find that very disrespectful for someone to come and try to buy me up, especially just a tournament. Like, it's compete, read, study, work hard, so that you actually benefit from the things that you're going to obtain. So normally, some of the ways you conduct yourself even previously will affect the type of adjudicator you can become, because some people probably, if things went wrong, for example, I had an incident in my last tournament that I was CA, was the UNSA National, I think 2020, what, I don't remember, 2022, 2020, no, 2023 UNSA. at London College in Impigi. I remember that there was a scuffle, and so there was a bit of challenge during that tournament where a certain school felt that I was not going to be fair to them because I had not maybe because they had lost to a certain school during their regional tournament, and they felt that this school didn't speak as good English as we did. So maybe they felt that, oh, we should have won really. And I didn't think so, because normally adjudication of debate comes down more to like principle and the actual content vis-a-vis the English. So sometimes some good schools tend to assume certain positions so that sometimes they are shocked by the verdict. So when I gave that verdict, it affected their attitude towards me. I think they thought I had a personal grudge, but I didn't know them. So for semifinals, I'm going to judge. And I made a very long panel because the tournament was getting out of hand. So sometimes you like adjust and say, yeah, this tournament is becoming extremely competitive, and so many complaints and all that. So you want to like maybe establish some bit of credibility and belief in the system by making the panel as big as you can, so that people see, oh yeah, like if 9 people have decided against me, surely I can't be saying that. Anyway, debaters and patrons are funny, they'll still come up with the same complaints. So I remember that particular school came and asked me to recuse myself from the semi-finals panel because they felt that I wouldn't fairly dispense justice in the tournament, in their round with another school. And I took offense. I took offense because I didn't think that I was known for being that impartial. I didn't think that was one of my records. But secondly, I said no, I would not be recusing myself because there are 9 adjudicators. Even if I don't vote for you, the rest of the 8 would actually vote for you. Plus, I wasn't even in the chair on the panel. So when I refused to recuse myself, as fate would have it, these guys actually lost the semi-final where I sat. And when it came to finals, there was a serious scuffle when I was going to like say announce the verdict of that semi-final. And I remember that some patrons were saying, no, she even refused to recuse herself. She's impartial. What? They're cheating for this school. She has trained. And I remember the faces of a number of patrons who said, you guys are lying. She would not do that. I remember one of them was, I think, the patron from one of the schools that side in PG. Came and said, no. I know you may not, you might be clouded by feelings right now, but that's not who she is. And I think that even when you get to some of these circumstances where you will get your reputation prior and how you handle things before will actually stand in for you and help you maintain credibility. Again, I said that's very, very important to you. So when you set some of those principles and actually act by them, then it becomes easier for you. Then the second thing is transparency, right? As a chief adjudicator, what does transparency look like? I think it looks like explaining each and everything at the beginning of the tournament. Like hold that mic and tell people we are going to have 5 motions. 2 are going to be impromptu. This is how we are handling impromptu motions. Should you share with your patrons, I'm going to disqualify you. Should you do this, you're going to be knocked out. Should you do this, you're going to get credit. Explain each and everything. Why is that important? That's important because one, everyone is on track. So that when I meet you outside discussing with your patron, I've ever done it. I've done it several. Like some people think it's jokes. Impromptu, I tell you don't interact with your patron, and I see interacting with your patron, and I meet you and I disqualify you. Then you go complain. But I told you on the mic, don't interact with the patron. So sometimes that's very important, that you're very transparent from the very beginning. Let people know your rules, let people know how you're going to run the tournament, so that when things start to happen, when I disqualify you, you don't come and say I'm unfair. There's a patron who told me I'm not parental. But a tournament has got to have rules that govern it. A tournament has got to run with some kind of order. Short of that, they'll take advantage of the system, and then there's going to be lack of organization. Some people are cheating, some are not. It becomes unfair if one patron is helping another and others are actually not getting the help. So as CA, it's your role to balance that. But if you're able to communicate each and everything at the commencement of the tournament, you brief the entire tournament on what the rules are going to be, how certain things are going to run. It cultivates a level of trust between you and the system itself, because everyone becomes aware of what is going to happen. But also there is a sense of organization that you cultivate within the participants and their patrons, because they know this is how we're going to run. So transparency also helps you minimize conflict. So for me, if I tell you, if you do this, I'm done. Like on top, I'm going to ensure you're kicked out. And you do it, and I actually ensure parental, I may look at the moment important for any CA to be able to